and welcome to Capitol Hill. I'm Nick Dole. The Prime Minister Julia Gillard is digging in, dismissing speculation she may not lead the party to an election. A series of bad polls has some Labor MPs contemplating a return to Kevin Rudd. He says he won't challenge, so a leadership change would require either a tap on the shoulder or a voluntary exit, and at the moment both those are being ruled out. The Prime Minister's trying not to let it distract her from her primary focus, getting an agreement on education funding reform. But today she's also introduced another issue into the political debate: abortion. To discuss the day, I'm joined by Labor MP Stephen Jones, who's in Sydney, and Liberal MP Alan Tudge in Melbourne. Welcome to you both.
Good to be with you, Nick. Alan.
Let's start with the Prime Minister. It's been a while since she's spoken to the media, but this morning she made it clear she's not going anywhere.
There's been plenty of speculation and rumour mongering, and if people are wasting their time on that, that's time that would be better used out there in the community, putting the case for Australia's kids and Australia's schools. I will certainly be leading Labor at the next election.
Enough is enough. Really, enough is enough. I think the Australian people are sick of the soap opera. They're sick of seeing the faceless men deciding who the Prime Minister should be.
Stephen Jones, can we start with you? Do you think the Prime Minister is the best person to take Labor to the election in September?
Well, look, that matter was resolved in February last year. The Prime Minister has the full support of the caucus and will be going into what is admittedly a tough election. But here's one thing I'm absolutely committed to do, and that is ensuring that we don't throw in the towel. It is a tough election for us, but we've got to take the case up for Labor right around the country, and there's a very good reason for that. That is that we've got a good story to tell, the strongest economy in the developed world, and we're facing off against the guy who's probably the most unfit leader of the Liberal Party to put his hand up for Prime Minister in the 100 years of this Parliament. He's bored by economics, therefore he's got wacky economics policies. He's disinterested in policy, and therefore he's got wacky policy answers to just everything going. So we've got a tough election, there's no doubt about it, but we're going out there to fight it.
Stephen, you say you've got a good story to tell though, but isn't it the fact that people just don't seem to be listening to that story anymore, and it appears to be because of the Prime Minister herself?
When I get about my electorate, they want to hear the good things that the Labor government is doing. I must admit I get a bit bemused. You know, one of your brethren says something on a Sunday news program and you all run off like headless chooks saying, oh, something must be going on, and you get a 48-hour news cycle out of it. Frankly, I think some in the press gallery ought to be looking at themselves. We're out there campaigning and talking about the things that we need to do. And let all of this other nonsense and speculation put that behind us.
But you personally, you do believe that Julia Gillard is the best leader?
Now, like I said, that matter was resolved in February last year.
But what about your own personal view though, Stephen?
Look, I think the Prime Minister is doing a very good job in a tough circumstance. We're locking in behind her and ensuring that we put the case for Labor at the September 2013 election.
Alan Tudge, who do you think would be a tougher adversary, Kevin Rudd or Julia Gillard?
Listen, both have their strengths and their weaknesses, but in some respects the question is not for me to answer. The question is for the Australian people to decide who they would like to see as their next Prime Minister. And I think that's the key thing. Instead of the faceless men deciding whether or not it should be Julia Gillard or Kevin Rudd who's the next Prime Minister, we think the Australian people should decide who the next Prime Minister is. And what we want to see and what the Australian public want is for this chaos to end, for the endless leadership speculation to end, and for the government to actually focus on the needs of the Australian people.
Well, let's hear from some of the Prime Minister's colleagues now, most of whom are well and truly behind her. But one Rudd supporter, Chris Bowen, suggested at least today that he hasn't changed his tune.
Well, I thought I made my views about that very clear in March. I've made my views clear about that consistently. I felt strongly enough about it to resign my position from the Cabinet, but the matter was settled then.
A couple of people obviously didn't get the message of what Kevin Rudd said. He would not challenge again for the leadership.
When it comes to all of this fevered speculation about opinion polls, it doesn't matter a row of beans.
There is no off chance about this. The party is supporting Julia Gillard, the Prime Minister of Australia.
There's always a lot of colour and movement around this topic, but no, Julia will lead us to the election. Do you want her to step aside for the good of the party?
Absolutely not. I think that the Prime Minister's done a terrific job under very difficult circumstances.
Stephen Jones, isn't it true that if Kevin Rudd were to retake the leadership, a number of seats that otherwise look pretty much doomed might actually have a hope?
Oh, well, look, it's a baseless hypothetical. Kevin Rudd has said that he won't be challenging for the leadership, so I don't think there's any point in speculating upon that.
You're right, he said he won't challenge, but what about if someone gave him a tap on the shoulder? Do you think Bill Shorten, having command of a significant number of MPs in the caucus, should be making it clear to the Prime Minister, for the sake of the party, she should step aside?
Look, can I repeat again, it's your job to speculate, your job to commentate, my job to be out there putting the case for Labor in my electorate, and I intend to be playing full two halves. I won't be throwing the towel in. I'm going out there to campaign and put the case for Labor in my electorate and nationally. I'll leave the speculation up to you guys. OK, fair enough. Well, look, this afternoon the Prime Minister made a touch on an issue that came from left field to some extent. The Prime Minister was addressing the Women for Gillard initiative, where she said that under Tony Abbott, women would again be banished from the centre of Australian politics, and that abortion risked becoming the political plaything of men who think they know better. Stephen Jones, were you surprised by these comments? They seemed a bit out of the blue, didn't they? Look, I've got to say I was surprised by it. Let me make it quite clear. I believe in a woman's right to choose. I believe in that very famous formula of Bill Clinton himself, that abortion should be safe, legal and rare. And I'm not convinced of the wisdom of kicking this into a political debate. I think the 2013 election should be faced up around the big policy issues, as important as that one is, on the economy, on education, on the National Disability Insurance Scheme, on where we're going with the future of manufacturing in this country, and how we continue to support jobs and employment as the world economy is going through an uncertain set of circumstances. Yeah. They're the issues I'd rather be talking about. Do you think it's unwise to be raising this now, particularly when the Prime Minister, as you say, has, well, even today she was putting education firmly on the agenda? Is it a bit of a distraction, do you think? No, look, it's not unusual when the Prime Minister is talking to a group of sisters in a very specific forum that should be talking about a whole range of issues of concern and interest to them, and reflecting upon the voting history and the decision-making history of the Leader of the Opposition. I think viewed within that context, the comments and the speech given by the Prime Minister today are entirely unremarkable. OK, well, Alan Tudge, can I ask you, I mean, Tony Abbott, of course, has in the past been an adversary of abortion, if you like, but he says that he certainly believes women have the right to choose. Do you think this is a campaign that might actually create some problems for the coalition coming up to September?
Nick, can I firstly pick up on your point that he's an adversary of abortion?
In the past.
He was Health Minister, and during the time as Health Minister he never rejected any application. And I point out that abortion laws are actually governed at the state level, not at the federal level. But in relation to the Prime Minister's comments, I actually think they were deeply offensive. I mean, they were offensive to the very senior women within the coalition, including the Deputy Leader and the Opposition Leader's Chief of Staff. And in some respects, they're offensive to the men, because it suggests that men aren't able to have a view on some of these important ethical issues. And I think that, you know, again, the Prime Minister is being very divisive. And whereas instead of what we need at the moment is a person who can unite Australia, the Prime Minister is again trying to pit men versus women. And the next day she'll be pitting the working class versus the bosses. We need a uniter, not a divider. It is pretty divisive, isn't it, Stephen Jones?
I've got to say, taking a lecture from a Liberal Party MP on divisiveness, frankly, after the last 2.5 years in Australian political life is a little bit rich. Who are the Liberal and National Party MPs who've stood in front of signs that said things such as ditch the bitch, who are the Liberal Party MPs who on ABC television not 5 days ago were using the most horrendous and offensive images to talk about the Prime Minister of this country. I don't care what party they come from. You don't talk about slitting somebody's throat. So taking a lecture from a Liberal Party MP on offensiveness, given the last 2 years of Australian political discourse,
Stephen,
is frankly a little bit rich.
Stephen, what evidence?
Get off your high horse. You know very well that this Prime Minister has been almost the most divisive Prime Minister in Australian political history.
Stephen,
whereas Bob Hawke went down as a great
gentlemen,
this Prime Minister
we're just
will go
talking
down
over
as a
each other
great
now.
divider.
So, Stephen, can I just ask, what evidence is there that the opposition, should it be elected to government, would banish women from the centre of political life? I mean, there are many senior female politicians in Tony Abbott's ranks.
As I said earlier, Nick, when looked at in their full context, the comments of the Prime Minister reflecting upon the voting history and the decision-making history of the Leader of the Opposition, I think that's the context
what's the decision-making history here? What's the decision-making history here, Stephen? You're deliberately misleading the Australian
public. Can you be more specific then, Stephen?
Sorry, let me talk about one specific matter. When he was Health Minister, he had to be forced by a private member's bill to approve the use of RU486 in this country.
There was no application for use of RU486 into this nation, Stephen. You know that. You know that, Stephen.
Alan is right. There wasn't actually an application in the end.
Application for RU486. This is a deliberate, misleading and deceptive statement which Stephen is putting out, and it's what the Prime Minister is also trying to prosecute today. Okay, it is very divisive in the Australian public. Very divisive.
Let's talk about some of the issues that Stephen says should really count. The Prime Minister today was in Brisbane. She was putting the pressure on Campbell Newman to sign up to the Gonski education reforms, and she's also applying equal pressure to Dennis Napthine, the Victorian Premier. Alan, you're a Victorian. Wouldn't you like to see many billions of extra dollars flow to Victorian schools? Why can't Victoria sign up to these plans when New South Wales can?
Nick, I would like to see many extra billions of dollars flow into Victorian schools, but what is on the table presently, as outlined in the budget numbers, is not billions of dollars over the next 4 years. In fact, when you look into the detail of the budget figures, you see a cut to school funding of $325 million
in the long term, though, Alan, there is a lot of extra
years.
money going to schools.
But this is talking about year 5, 6 and 7. In the past, this is 3 elections away, Nick, that the Prime Minister is promising that there'll be rivers of gold. But what most schools are interested in and what the state governments are interested in is what will occur over the next 4 years. And when they look at that, they look at the budget figures, and the budget figures actually show a decrease in school funding from the Commonwealth to the state governments. And that's why they're being very reticent about signing up, and that's why only one state and one territory have signed up so far.
Stephen, just very quickly, how important is it that these states sign up by June 30, and how much of a mark on the Prime Minister's leadership might it be if they don't sign up?
Well, it's critical to the education of literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids around the country. Let's look at the background of this.
Just very quickly,
A review by Gonski said we were falling behind. We need more money. The Commonwealth's coming to the table. $4 billion in Alan's home state of Victoria, 3.8 in Queensland. Right. The money is there.
Gentlemen, I will have to cut you both off. I'm very sorry to do that, but we're going to have to move on. Alan Tudge.